Okay, so hi guys, this is Aserwarth's Looks. This is more of a different video because it's going to be more focused on how he plays looks rather than things he did wrong, but I'm still going to try and point out things he did wrong. So basically, first thing, level 1, you stood in this bush, which is actually quite dangerous to do, but I mean, it's okay. If you take your E first, there's no real harm in just throwing it into this bush because it's the only place they can really come from, so I think that's the first key thing you should notice here. Because if they have something that can just kill you straight away, like a hook, or if Heimerdinger got his E first and threw it into the bush, like, it's pretty scary and you'll pretty much die for free. So that's the first key thing I noticed this game. But basically, to go on and talk a little bit more, this is a different kind of game because this Lux sent me the replay and asked me to review it and see how his Lux was, and he paid me to do it. So it's not just a this is how you lost the game, blah blah blah, standard replay analysis that most replays are. So just so I get out of the way with at the start of the game. That was a pretty easy first blood for Tryndamere, but we're not watching Tryndamere, we're watching Lux. Okay. So basically, first thing, you're against a Heimerdinger, which is like a weird matchup, so you probably don't know how to play the matchup because it's really odd. He started with odd items. He started one potion, one mana potion, Doran's Ring. So like, if I was playing Lux in this situation, every single E I had pretty much would be thrown onto Heimerdinger and then getting the auto attack onto him. Because if you harass him down enough, you can pretty much just kill him because he only has one potion and he has no way of getting sort of health back. So you should be constantly throwing harass into this Heimerdinger, especially because of your start. You start at 3 potions, which means you can trade really efficiently because 3 potions to 1 potion is pretty brainless. So that's the first thing. This Heimerdinger should be on farm status pretty much if you play this right. Instead you're kind of eing in odd positions, like there's no reason here, especially here, you should be auto-attacking this Heimerdinger constantly. Every time he goes for a crit kill he should receive an auto-attack because it's Heimerdinger. Like, don't be scared of him kind of thing. Here you get an auto-attack and you get some really nice damage onto him. Unfortunately you queued into the minions instead of like hitting him, but that's kind of like a small point, I guess. Also, the other thing I noticed as replay is you got a really early blue buff. That's obviously really good for winning the mid lane because it allows you to spam more. But this is kind of like the odd thing that I noticed is that everyone knows the Sinzar's coming because you've ordered it, which is pretty good. But it's like the most awkward gank I've ever seen. Sort of like, this is your key here to throw a Q, and you do, but then you miss it, and this should be like the signal where you either back off or you go all the way in. And you didn't really do either. You kind of like stood here creep killing. Hecarim went really deep onto the Sin, which isn't the worst play because he's got a level advantage. But then you kind of were too far back to help him, and you didn't skill here. You could have quick skilled your W, and you didn't skill your W. So like, it might not have been the massivest difference between him living and him dying, but if you skilled your barrier, that would be like 160 absorb onto Hecarim, which might have got you either Zinzal's flash or sort of a death on him. But I mean, ultimately that was probably Hecarim's fault. But I'm trying to focus on your mistakes mostly. He could have flashed, he could have done things there. So that wasn't too bad by you. But I mean, at the same time, you still could have done more. Quick skilling is really important on Lux and just champions in general. Here again, you're kind of scared of Heimerdinger. I'm not sure why you're scared of Heimerdinger, because he's really not that scary, especially when you have items on him. You have 2 health potions left, he has 1. You should be standing here just attacking him, especially because he has creep saying him. Like, you backing off here is kind of giving the lane up a bit. I think it's a bit of a mistake to back off from Heimerdinger, ever, really. Also, another thing, when you get pushed up with Lux, it's actually quite hard to kill creeps, and a lot of the time it's better to just give them up. Like in this situation, I would try and take these 2 creeps here, and maybe just give all the range creeps up. Because you're never going to be able to CS them no matter how good you are at creep killing, because they're just at a point where they're sort of unkillable. So, yeah. And then instead, you sort of try to kill them all, which is okay in some parts, because like you have a blue buff, you should try and kill creeps, obviously. But at the same time, like, you lose a lot of HP here tanking creeps, and then you get a Heimerdinger rocket, and now you're down to 290 HP, when you could have been at 580 still. So you lost 300 HP, and you actually only got 3 creeps. So that was a pretty big mistake, I think. You kind of gave a lot of lane control up by doing that. So that's definitely something I would note there. Also, like, again, your E does so much damage if you hit it. It's like 160 damage with a slow, and if you proc your passive, you like half HP this Heimerdinger. Instead of using it to kill creeps, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's kind of like a very passive playstyle. Well, I would prefer you to be a lot more aggressive. because, like I said, he's got one potion. You have to punish the fact that he starts Doran's Ring, because him starting Doran's Ring gives him advantage on you, like in the mid game, because he has sort of like the extra gold that wasn't potions and a ward. So make sure you always sort of pressure it. I noticed here you took Race, which is a really good idea. Something I talked to you about was taking Race more often, and this is a great time to do it. You've got blue buff, the lane's got a catapult wave, so it's going to push towards you if he attacks. And yeah, this was a really good play here by taking the Race. The next thing you did, I didn't like as much, but it was still pretty good. You got level 6, and then you all made the wave, which is good. And you threw your E down, and you killed a catapult. But here, like, when you use your ultimate on Lux, this is the best time to recall, because you lose all kill potential for 50 seconds. So there's no reason to be in the lane that you can't sort of kill people or even get out of, because you're just not going to do anything. You got hit by a rocket here as well, which is fine. You always get hit by rockets. But in general, you didn't have a blue buff anymore either, so you kind of left yourself in the lane with like 89 mana and no ultimate and just not really a lot. And you can't really kill these creeps efficiently because you don't have mana to kill them. So you kind of missed your recall, because this is like your one recall opportunity that you had to get Boots and a Chalice, but you didn't. So I think this was a pretty big mistake. Instead here, you recalled at 7 minutes, but by recalling at 7 minutes, you actually lost all these creeps, which is more creeps than you would have lost if you did this recall after you lasered the race, because you lose at least 6 creeps there, and you didn't need to lose 6 creeps basically. Like, you would have lost 6 creeps no matter what happened if you'd have just recalled after the race. It would have been like a straight even trade. You lost 5 creeps, 6 creeps. So even if you'd have lost the whole wave, which would not have happened because Heimerdinger could not push, it would have been definitely the better play to recall early. Something to know actually, for anybody, recalling early is very, very effective if you do it at the right times, because you just get an item advantage, and if you have an item advantage, you win the lane. It's pretty simple. So at 8 minutes 10, you push the wave, but you don't really achieve anything from it. You sort of bought a ward, which is good, but you kind of hang around in this awkward mid-game, like mid-lane game, where you're not really doing anything. Like, you could be killing the wolves here, you could be warding the enemy race so you know what's going on and you have map vision, or you could even be warding the enemy blue and going for it with a steal with your ultimate, because you know that Heimerdinger doesn't have a blue buff, so that's obviously up. Instead, you just kind of like hung around, always had the turret a bit, and then just did circles in the middle lane for 20 seconds. I think that was sort of your biggest mistake. And then sort of by doing that, like, you gave Jin a good opportunity to gank, and you hit a nice binding and ran away, so you didn't really lose a lot from it. That's a bit of HP, but it's kind of irrelevant. But by doing that, like I said, that's kind of like why that happened. Hecarim gets a nice play there. You ultimated without sort of using your other abilities. I think that's a bit of a mistake, because the real damage you get from Lux is sort of doing everything at once, not using your ultimate just for snipes, and there's no way you'd kill that in there. You hit a nice Q on Heimerdinger, and he uses barrier, which is kind of unfortunate. Heimerdinger kind of runs to the side, and then this awkward engage goes on. You misguess here. You saw this Heimerdinger coming from quite a bit away, and then you eat the wolves for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe that was the nerves or something. So I'm not going to go too in depth on that, because it's whatever. And again, you kind of like man down a bit here. Your passive does quite a lot of damage, and your auto attacks do a lot of damage. I think you could have killed Heimerdinger here, even though you had like not that much mana. You still had the mana for E in about 5 seconds. You could probably E him, maybe like 6 seconds. And yeah, 5-6 seconds, you'd have eat this Heimerdinger, and you'd have killed him 100% there. And there's no way he pretty much could have killed you there, because you know he doesn't have barrier. And you still have barrier and flash, so like taking that trade would be really, really worth it for you. So then that was a bit of a mistake as well. So you kind of gave up 2 kills that you could have taken because you were too scared to do it. Obviously that's like inexperience with Lux, but it's still something to point out. I'm going to fast forward this a bit because it's basically just you killing creeps, which is not really anything that interesting. And again, like, if you're this low and you don't have that much mana, ultimating the wave there's nothing wrong with it. You should just do it, because you can't lane, so just ultimate it and don't lose creeps. Instead, you kind of like try and take the creeps, and you lose 5 creeps and have to recall anyway. So if you'd have pressed R and it's recalled, you'd have got 5 more creeps, and yeah. And instead you do it here, which is like awkward because they're not low enough to kill them now. So you just lost more creeps by doing that. You lost 10 creeps here because of like when you chose to kill them, basically. If you'd have ultimated and recalled, then you wouldn't have lost almost 12 creeps, I think. Yeah, which is quite a lot of creeps to miss, honestly. So you need to work on when to laser and recall. It's a really important skill to have. But then you made up for it by going toward the race, which I think is a really good play. You sort of took over a lot of map control here. Anytime you can get a ward in the race and steal the race, it's really, really good. So I really like this play here. I'm going to fast forward this again because most of you just kind of creeps. Okay, so about 15:45, you made a really nice combination on Heimerdinger here. You hit the E, you hit the R, blah blah. But then you kind of just didn't kill him. I'm not really sure why you don't kill him here, because you know he doesn't have barrier, you know he doesn't have flash, because you just made him use it before, like 2 minutes before this. And you have everything up, so like there's no reason to be scared of all of them here. You could have just kept walking after him, threw an E and killed him 100% of the time. Your E would have killed him without an auto attack almost. Probably would have done actually. And instead you kind of walk around the turret. You're way scared of this turret for some reason, even though you have flash barrier. And you eat a bush, obviously he's not going to be in there. So you gave up a third kill on Heimerdinger. I think that's a bit of a mistake because you're only 0-0-1. Like, you could be 3-0-1 at this point in the game if you hadn't to give up 3 kills because you were too scared of them. So I think that's something you need to work on for sure. And here, sort of like, this is like an awkward like fight and whatever. Hecarim pretty much dies, and then you're in this position where you could kill Heimerdinger, but you don't. You miss the laser by like an inch, so it's really unlucky. But then you died without using your barrier or your flash, which is quite a big mistake. Something to note that you might not know is that you can use barrier while you're ulting, so you don't actually like cancel your ultimate or anything. So you could have barriered while ulting and then flashed away afterwards, and you'd have lived. By you dying, Tristana got like mad farm and mad kills, but again, we're not focusing on that, so we won't. Okay, so just one quick thing to note is your item choice is really good. I really like it, so we won't talk about items because you built pretty much perfect so far. So at 18:10, this awkward fight happens, and you don't know these people are coming behind you. I mean, game sense could tell you maybe, but like, in general, it's quite hard to tell that they're coming behind you. Now, here you'll notice you hit Q on Heimerdinger, and then you get mini stunned. But now here, he's still stunned for like a long time. And once you hit Q on somebody as Lux, there's no reason not to just blow everything you have. I'm going to change the fog of war so we can see exactly what you see. And basically, you see a vein coming towards you, so it should be like your key to either kill this guy or run up the river. The best place you can run here is by far up the river because you have a Tryndamere here who has an Oracles, so you know there's no way they can be anywhere around here. Instead, you sort of back off with Heimerdinger because again, you're scared of him, even though you have a Tryndamere coming towards you who's really farmed. You're pretty scared of him, and then you run into a Zen and a Nunu, and then you die. I mean, there's not really much you could have done once you started running backwards. It was more of a game sense thing where you have to blow everything once you hit one thing. Because you had an escape route planned if you just made Heimerdinger either back or die. But instead you ran backwards into the turrets and coincidentally 2 more people. But basically you want to always run away from turrets, so going backwards is the wrong choice by far there. Okay, so about 20 minutes into the game is where you want to stop ultimate creeps because you become so much less of a threat when the enemy team knows you don't have ultimate, and they're really not scared of you when you can't one-hit them. So make sure you stop ultimate creeps at a certain point of the game because here you ultimate the creeps when honestly you could have moved forward and hit a Q on either Vayne or Nunu and either killed them or made them have to recall. Instead you could sort of ultimate the wave, only got 3 of the creeps, and then had to eat the wave anyway, which you could have done just in general and not have to waste your ultimate. So here again, like, if this was a decent player, there's a chance you could have died here because he could have rolled this way, eat you into the wall, bladed you, and then killed you. And there wasn't much you could have done about it because you didn't have your barrier, you didn't have your flash, and you didn't have ultimate to make them scared. And the reason they weren't scared of doing this, and a good player would have killed you here, the reason they wouldn't be scared is because they know you don't have ultimate. So by showing your ultimate cooldown, you kind of give them an easy way to kill you, basically is what I'm trying to say. So after this, not really a lot happens. Tryndamere gets really, really fed, and then sort of just carries the game in general. You hit a lot of nice binds, which I'm going to watch, but in general, like I think the first 20 minutes of Lux games is where everything goes on. After that, it's more just a case of throwing out random binds and then waiting to hit somebody and kill them. So the first 20 minutes is obviously what I'm going to focus on because it's the most important by far. Your creep kills are really good though, that's one thing I noticed. 158 creep kills at 20 minutes Lux, honestly it's pretty good. Especially because you've had like a lot of action and stuff like that, so I think it's pretty good. Also, you get to a point in the game where you need to start choosing your ultimate targets a little bit better, but I mean, even I made this mistake, and I don't really think it's that much of a mistake, because if you can blow someone up and make them either recall or like die, it's worth it either way. So by ultimating this in here, it wasn't the best choice because you didn't kill him, but it also wasn't a bad choice. It's just kind of one of them, oh well, I took this guy out of the fight, do stuff things. So I mean, it's not like that bad at all. One thing I did notice here though is that you're obviously building towards the death cap, which is really good, but sometimes Void Staff is just playing better. Not against this team at all because they don't have an Aegis, but against teams that get a really, really early Aegis or a rumiahreplays walk, you want to be buying quite a fast Void Staff just to get through that extra magic penetration. Because even with a death cap, if they have the rumiahreplays walk aura, there's pretty much no way you're going to one hit anybody. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, here you did the right choice by just keeping this. You zoned this out of the fight really well by just ultimating him, keep him away. It's a really good choice. And then by ultimating him in the past, he comes forward. He's already low enough from your ultimate, and he dies. So good play there. So really, the only other thing I noticed in this game was about 30 minutes. He bought another leadless Raj Rod. Again, I presume this was for Azonias or something, which isn't that bad of a choice. But if you want to get the maximum damage output, which is pretty much what you want to do as Lux, because you're all about one hitting somebody, Void Staff is by far a superior choice here. You could actually afford a Void Staff if you didn't buy this rod. You'd have by far enough gold to afford this Void Staff, and I think it would have been like a way better pickup, especially when you're quite far ahead, because it just puts you further ahead. Whereas a rod gives you more AP, sure, but you don't get a magic penetration, which is like really important on Lux. You see here, you hit a nice point on this Heimerdinger, but for some reason you didn't try and kill him. I'm not really sure why, because honestly, one ultimate probably would have killed him at this point of the game, or even took him like extremely low, in which case your Hecarim might have ultimate and killed him. So there's always little minor things you can improve on. The same thing kind of goes for this like weird fight. You have Hecarim pushing top with a Tryndamere, and you know you're powerful enough to one hit anybody at this point of the game. You kill the minions, whatever, who cares? And then you sort of shot this weird ultimate upwards, which doesn't really achieve anything because nobody's low enough to hit. And okay, maybe you hit two people here, but you're never going to be able to kill either of them, and no one's going to kill him because Hecarim's really low, Tryndamere is low, he's ultimate on, and you sort of half HP to Bane, but it doesn't really achieve anything because you have to one hit people. I need to stress that point. You have to one hit people as Lux to be useful. You really need to one hit them low enough that they have to recall or they die. But leaving people at like half HP, it's like not very good. Especially here, because if you had your ultimate here, this was a dead Nunu, 100%, and that was a dead Oracle, which is like a massive gold waste. So just keep that in mind. Obviously he died anyway, so whatever. But that's because Tristana was there to kill him. So I mean, you don't want to rely on teammates as much. As often as you can, don't rely on teammates. But I mean, yeah, it still didn't matter that much because he still died. But hopefully you understand where I'm coming from with that one. So in general, I really like this game. I think it was a pretty good representative of how good you are at Lux, even though you haven't played it very much. 17-15 is a good score to end up with no matter what. I said to you, dying not very often on Lux is kind of the key thing to make, and you only had 2 deaths this game, which is really important. And one of them was actually preventable because it was the barrier flash death. So yeah, I think in general your Lux is getting like really good, and if you just keep at it, I think you'll really gain elo easily with it because it's a very easy champion to gain elo with. And yeah, just one thing is obviously be a little bit more aggressive on someone like Heimerdinger, because as I pointed out earlier in this video, you could have killed him a couple of times and then he'd have been sort of 3-0 at a point where 900 gold is quite a lot of gold to have. Early game as Lux, it gets you your death cap that much quicker, it gets you that void stuff that much quicker, and that's about all really. One thing at the end of the game, you did build a Sheen. Maybe that's to a Lichbane, but don't do that at the end of the game. Sheen is a bad item for Lux, in my opinion. I think you just want flat AP damage instead, or even like a Guardian Angel or something. Lichbane I don't really rate at all on Lux, because if you're actually in range in the end game to attack anybody, chances are you're going to die anyway, because you don't really use your passive with auto attacks at the end of the game, because if you use your ultimate, it procs your passive from the E, so you don't really need to auto attack anybody. So that's why, in my opinion, Lichbane is a bad item on Lux. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, in general, I think your Lux is really pretty good. And other than the couple early things with like learning when to recall and learning when to ultimate waves and when not to ultimate waves, I'm really quite impressed by it. So thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something, etc. etc.